Okay, everybody, we're going to start our webinar. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Welcome to the partner webinar, our second of a series of channel partner webinars. We thank you guys for attending. Today, I have here Robin Melhuish, who joined us all the way from Los Angeles. Welcome, Robin.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Robin is our Director of Channel Sales and Solutions, and today, Robin and I will be going over the Veritone Essentials application suite. Just having a slight little technical difficulties. So here's today's agenda. So today we're going to quickly review aiWARE, just a quick overview, and then talk about the Essentials Overview Suite. And then we'll go to a product demo and then provide some final thoughts. So let's talk about aiWARE. Now, we talked a little bit about this at our last webinar. This is our technology stack that some of you guys have seen before. And again, we wanted to bring this up just as a quick background and setting that foundation that really, aiWARE, the operating system for AI, is really the core and the foundation of what we're about to talk today about, which is the application suites up here. So when we look at what our aiWARE technology stack here, we have obviously created a foundation where we can ingest structured and unstructured data down here at the bottom of the stack, run them through a series of cognitive engines, and apply it, if need be, with conductor technology that basically orchestrates AI engines together to give you better accuracy and so forth. And once we get the metadata around that, we allow you to index and search. And through APIs, you can build applications that are custom for industry-specific applications. So in this case today, we're going to be focusing around the Veritone application suite and today, which is up on the top layer here, and it'll be all around Veritone aiWARE Essentials. And like the last webinar, we talked about some of the key benefits of why our aiWARE is so important is that it's obviously it's a scalable infrastructure operating system that's enterprise grade. The way the operating system was developed, we actually help future-proof your investment in terms of AI technologies, given that we work with hundreds of AI engines and we have onboarded them. We also have, obviously, the ability to, with the tool sets that we have in the operating system, allow you to create turnkey applications that are just, again, industry-specific. And we leverage a bunch of our APIs that let you do that. And so it lets you get to the engines, it lets you get to the temporal elastic breaks, which allows you to find all that metadata and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say for a second here, Daniel, I think coming from the media and entertainment space, this is one of our unique advantages as Veritone, is that we've taken all of the complexity and the heavy lifting of moving from seeing an AI engine, realizing that it has an application in the media and entertainment space, and wanting to develop a business solution for the customer. And essentially what this OS system does is take all of the computational complexity out of that and give you direct access and a standardized version of those results inside your engine.
Great, thanks. So today, again, when we talk about what's going on, these applications, and this is where we find the power of our operating system is the ability to develop all these bespoke applications. Today, again, we're going to be focusing around Veritone Essentials, but we do have, and we're going to also offer channel webinar trainings around industry-specific applications in the future. So, things around like attribution, which we've created a specific application for that and solves for that. We have also a digital asset management application, one also for monetization and distribution called the Digital Media Hub, and another one around content licensing around commerce. And we'll again, in a future date, go through a deep dive on each of these. But today, our focus is Veritone aiWARE Essentials, which you're going to find, which makes up, again, 4 applications here. And these are going to be the core applications that you're going to use to find, search, and ingest things. So let's go over a quick overview of the Essentials application. As you can see, this is an intelligent content ingestion, management, search, and distribution, and it's all packaged around our aiWARE deployment. So today, Robin's going to walk us through each of these applications, starting with content management system, where you're going to, this is a smart content management system where you ingest and index stuff, and you're going to see your data payloads and how you apply AI engines around that. We'll go more through that demonstration later with Robin. We'll also talk about collections, and this is where, again, where you can collect and curate large amounts of clippings and then be able to share that. We'll also talk about Veritone Discovery, which is, again, it's kind of like the Google search of our application, where you're going to be able to go and find ad hoc searches as well as watch list around, again, particular types of clippings and help you find the needle in the haystack. We also have Veritone Library, which is an application known to train AI engines for people, places, and things and objects. And again, Robin will go through that. And then another application here, but we're not going to go much in depth of this. This is Veritone Administrator. This is really targeted for, your administrator, your key IT guy who's going to really control and configure things for you. We won't be touching this very much because we know that the audience that we're talking to today is not super technical, and so that will be done at you can talk to Robin or any of our sales engineers, and during the training of that again for aiWARE Essentials, we can give you a deeper dive on that offline. So with that in mind, we're gonna go with the demo here. And Robin, I'm going to hand this off to you. Let me just get that set up for you while we're getting that going.
Perfect. While you're doing that, Daniel, one of the things I wanted to mention is on one of the previous slides, you mentioned third-party applications. This is another important part of what Veritone brings to the table. A lot of those third-party applications right now are integrations with your favorite on-prem MAMs, with nonlinear editing systems, with other standard components in the media workflow that we know everybody's going to want to use. Once you've got one of those integrations, it's pre-configured so that since Veritone is always going to serve you back your data in a similar format, you can go and enable any engine from within those applications. Right, so let's go over to the Essential Suite. So to get to the Essential Suite, like anything in Veritone, we're primarily a cloud-based system and expressed through web browsers. So you'd simply go to the Veritone site and go and log in. I should say we do have hybrid solutions as well, especially of interest to channel partners. So while everything we'll be showing today is through a browser and cloud-based, you can do exactly the same thing on-prem. With some caveats, and that's to do with the roadmap, which we can go into greater detail if you're interested in that. So you just go in here, you'd log in as you would with any system, and that would take you to your content management folder.
So in here, this is our content management system application. And so as you know, I apologize in advance, but our internet's a little bit slow here. So if some things are loading, you'll see some things load very slow here. So,
so the content management, the reason why we show this first is because, the first thing you're going to want to do with your media and entertainment use case is to get your media actually into the system. And you would do that inside the CMS. The CMS is literally a CMS. So it's also where you would manage your files and your sources. We have two basic groups of data that can come into the system. One would be files, which can come from S3 or anywhere else you want to, or on-prem, and the other, which would be media streams, which would be broadcast media streams. In either case, what you would do is you would set up a source, and we'll see there's some sources pre-configured within the system right now. Most of these are audio, though there is a YouTube channel as well that can be used as a source. You can use web streams. We've got some connectors for mobile phones if you want to come directly from your mobile phones, or if you want to go from file-based, we've got them set up from, this is one I set up earlier from Amazon S3. Once you've set up your sources, you're going to want to create an ingestion job. And the ingestion job is where the magic really starts to happen. So here was an ingestion job, again, that I set up earlier, and we'll walk quickly through this. Of course, we'd give you much deeper training before anybody was expected to do this. But essentially, we'll start off with saying that in this case, the media is going to come from a bucket on Amazon S3. With an ingestion job, you are saying, when you want to schedule that media to be ingested. Since this is actually from a bucket, we would have it on demand or immediately. So the moment you drop something into the bucket, it would be ingested into the system. But if it was a stream, we can also add the idea of a schedule, and this will come up again and again as we go through the Essentials app. Because say you've got a broadcast feed and you only wanted to record between certain times of day, and you can set all that up in here as well.
Now, Robin, the content management system, as you're going through this, what typical user would be using this? Like,
this would be not heavily technical, but the sort of person who inside a broadcast or a media operation who handles files, who moves files around. It's not really a full archivist's way content management system. We do have that elsewhere, as we mentioned, Core and DMH. But it's somebody who is organizing files within inside the media. It's not necessarily your sales team or your advertising team. We'll come to them in a little while. They'd be using more of a discovery
application. Right.
Yeah.
Great.
The next thing you'd want to do would be to set up your processing, and this is where the magic really happens. So this is where you start to saying which AI engines you want to apply against the media that's coming into the CMS. We have a concept inside Veritone of cognitive categories. There's 320 approximately engines and growing inside Veritone right now. And I would say, those are all the big engines that you've probably heard of, the Googles and the Amazons and the big three and all the ones that you see at all the seminars. But also we particularly specialize in going out there, and we have an entire team who manages our ecosystem, who goes out there and discovers engines by a couple of guys just out of Stanford who so happen to come up with a transcription use case that's very relevant in media entertainment, or have built an engine that's going to recognize bars and tone, or program blacks, or audio dropouts. And so all those engines are available through the different cognitive categories, and we'll talk about a few of the cognitive categories here. The basic cognitive category that I think almost everybody wants to use in one form or another is transcription in media entertainment. I'd say that for two reasons. First of all, it's the most mature of the AI technologies, as anybody who's used Siri, whatever, knows. Speech to text is a very heavily researched, very accurate, very stable way of getting fast metadata back against any sort of speech and media. So it means that it's an inexpensive engine to run, and so it tends to be easy to run it on all your media as you're coming in. So everybody likes to use transcription to start off with. Another big area is facial detection, facial recognition. We'll show some examples of that later on. It's obviously of huge importance inside media entertainment, not just for recognizing actors, but for recognizing newscasters, for recognizing when people actually turn up. Another set of engines that we use often is object detection. And object detection refers to detecting any sort of object inside the video itself. So it can be, the obvious things of I can see a gun, or but it can also be things that are slightly less obvious, like say nudity detection or smoking detection for localization and compliance edits. So we tend to use a fair amount of object detection. It tends to be best used in conjunction with other engines to get to the accuracy. Text recognition is optical character recognition, which is on the actual characters that are presented on the screen, and that is actually surprisingly useful in media and entertainment space. I've been surprised since I've been here by how often we end up using that as a real clutch engine, particularly anywhere where you have graphics appearing in media like obviously slates, but also lower thirds for sports broadcasts or for news. If you've got titles coming up like you might have in a trailer, or if you have the legalese in commercials, all these things are very rich sources of metadata and can have really useful business use cases and workflows around them. And logo recognition, obviously of great use. I would also just quickly mention translation. not often used in media entertainment space, but it is certainly there. And speaker separation is actually becoming increasingly important. And so what speaker separation adds to your transcription is being able to recognize who's talking. So if you've got a football broadcast and you want to differentiate between the various different speakers, or what I'm seeing a lot of if you're doing paper edits in reality TV or in documentaries, and you've got a large amount of transcription running through because there's such a huge ratio of interviews to actual footage, you want to do everything on paper first. So we're using speaker separation there to distinguish between the speakers.
Great. So obviously transcription is probably the basic fundamental engine almost everybody in M&E uses, because once you transcribe it, I can now search through the transcript and find key words.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. I would just quickly mention, we can just drop through this. These are some pre-built data sources of various different types.
So let's stick here for a little bit. So this content templates here is really for ingestion of structured data, right? So if you have a structured data, for instance, an Excel file that has, an X column and a Y column, this is where you would want to ingest structured data in here, and then we would match that schema into a template. And if you don't have one, we would then help you correlate that. So that way you can then find your particular structured data and match it with the audio and video files.
Exactly. And I would emphasize what you're saying. I mean, this is not something that we would expect people to configure for themselves. As we engage with end users. We'd understand the business use case, and then we would have our team, or we've got some internal tools for building this, and it could be things like standard things as like playout, wide orbit for playout.
Right. So as you guys see on screen here, this is where Nielsen data comes in. This is where wide orbit or what have you. These are again third party structured data that comes in and so forth.
Yeah, and increasingly as we start moving deeper into media entertainment, I think there's all sorts of applications here. For instance, we could ingest IDA data, or we could go ahead and use IMDb Pro data, anything that you have the correct permissions to, and you can bring in as a structured data source. We can take that in and we can apply it as metadata.
But the key here is that you probably can't do it alone. You're going to have to work with us, because we have to make sure the schema matches the fields that your field has and so forth. So this is again, a game changing. There's a lot of guys who can't bring in structured data, but we also do structured and unstructured data.
Yeah, absolutely. Final thing I would say is you select the folder which you want the your eventual results to go into. If we go back here for a second to the CMS, so we've covered in some detail how you actually get your media into the system. We'll just look a little bit more within the CMS to see how it's then presented inside the CMS. And the CMS here is primarily looking at a file view of the data. So these are files that have been ingested. You could do the same thing for program streams, but we tend to look at those through discovery.
Right. So I like to say that this is where once you ingest your files, you can see your data payload, right?
Right, exactly.
You can see your data payload on what engines you ran across. So for instance, in this particular case, it looks like you have transcription in the upper left-hand corner with the icons. You have transcription, logo, object, and OCR running.
Yeah, exactly. We had transcription face, logo, and OCR. Yeah, and so we're looking at the transcription interface here. So if you click on the transcription, the player will go and search for those transcriptions. And I apologize, as Daniel mentioned, our internet is being a little slow down here in Costa Mesa today. And then it will play against that data.
And it's time correlated, right? So the transcription word, so for me to actually reach, once again, it loads up here, thanks to our internet. It'll be time correlated, and it'll play basically karaoke style as the video is playing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I would not suggest for a second that anybody would come in here and use this as a way of searching for metadata, because that's what you want to do within discovery, right? So when you're actually looking for a particular instance, we'll skip this one since it doesn't operating right now.
Yep.
But we'll take a quick look at face detection. So we've run some face detection against this as well. And you'll see that the athletes will start to come up.
Again, our apologies. Looks like the internet is a little bit slow on our end, so things are loading.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's super slow.
It really is. let's try and see whether text recognition is going to be any nicer to us here.
I think the internet is just slow all of a sudden. There we go.
So this is the OCR part of this. So I might have to refresh it altogether. So if the internet was cooperating, we would be able to click on any of the results in any of this data, and
that would jump obviously.
This would jump to the relevant point,
and it play. But given that the internet is slow, let's
go
move on.
Something else, exactly.
So back at content management system.
Go back to content management system. You can also, by the way, you can export and you can download content, obviously, against any of the things with the correct permissions.
So on the files over here, tell me a little bit about where it says the chargers and the file folders there. It looks like you can create different file folders. It looks like it's a simple, like kind of a Windows-like file system, if you will.
Yes, you can drag and drop, and you can put things into different folder structures. And you can, a lot of people use those folder structures as one of the fundamental organizations inside their workflow. Though that's on the file side of things. On the mention side of things, which we'll get to in a second, people tend to use collections.
Nice. So content management system, let's summarize really quickly here, right? This is the place where you're going to ingest stuff in there. You ingest your files. You run your engines in here, so you can pick the engines you want. You can choose them and so forth. You can see the data payload and find some kind of search to some extent, but it's not going to be like Discovery, which is probably a good lead-in. We should talk about how Discovery works versus CMS now.
Right. Well, Discovery, like everything else inside Veritone, is available through the app switcher. And if we switch across to Discovery for a second, we'll see the Discovery payload. Now, I think for most people, Discovery is where they're going to spend most of their time. I mean, this is where we really serve up all of that power of AI in a way that is intelligible and useful for people's business use cases.
So when you say most people, so again, CMS we talked about, that was your archivist. Those are your guys, your IT guys, or the person responsible for ingesting the media files into the system, or into aiWARE. Who's using Discovery? What are the personas?
This is where your sales teams come in. This is where the people who are actually interested in looking at those results and saying, "Show me my advertising analytics."
Right.
Or these are where your higher level media and entertainment business executives come in and say, "All right, I'm looking at my Sony library of all my films. I want to find all the films with a particular actor in it, or I want to find all the films with particular combinations."
So it could be also someone from post-production too as well, right?
Yes, just as easily, right. It could be an editor coming in here and using this as a search to find clips to serve up and trim and be able to find stuff in their media. Exactly.
Great.
So it's all of that stuff. And it's fundamentally built that way because it's built around the search idea.
Right.
So the foundation of Discovery is our search experience. And we have essentially two types of search inside Discovery. We have ad hoc searches, which we'll show you in a second, and we have watch lists. And I think probably the easiest way to explaining what a watch list is to start by showing you what how an ad hoc search works.
Sure, that sounds great.
So when we go in here, we can search against those same, you may notice the same icons again here, cognitive classes of engines. And in this case, we're going to search against the transcript.
So can you just show me a little bit about the engines, so this icon? So what are they? It's transcription.
Sure. This is transcription and facial recognition. We've been through that before. This is object and then logo recognition. And that's OCR. So those are the basic ones. Fingerprinting is an audio fingerprinting technology. It is used, not quite so common. Sentiment is, we have some sentiment engines inside here. honestly, we find at the moment that most of the results we get back is not sufficiently compelling for medium intent
So
use cases.
so the sentiment engine, to my understanding, is we analyze the words, and then from there we can tell if it's emotion. So if a word is a negative word, I am mad. Mad would be, obviously they would show a sentiment as a thumbs down, meaning kind of negative. Versus the engines are not smart enough to know the tone of the person's voice.
They're not really going to know the tone of the person's voice. We have got some engines in here that will do a similar sort of thing with facial recognition, where they will do some simple emotion detection.
Right.
But I would say that's a category that's going to become more and more important as we go along. But at the moment, it's still pretty much in sci-fi land.
Correct.
For practical use. There's geolocation. There's traditional tagging, if you've got that inside there. There's structured data, which we've already talked about, and you can also organize things on dates. But for right now, let's go and search for something on the transcript. So we would just type in the word we're looking for on the transcript. It'll go away and do its search in the background. And while it's doing that.
So you made a search. You wanted to find every spoken word that was said in your media, right? That said the word Intel. Right.
And I've got back now about 1.3 million mentions of Intel inside all of the media that's inside this account right now. Obviously, 1.3 mentions doesn't get us very far. So the next thing we would do is we'd say, well, what I'm really interested in here is when it appears on Bloomberg, and we want to see when Emily Chang is talking about Intel, because I remember that's the thing I was looking for.
So what you're doing is you're now trying to find that needle in the haystack for me, right?
Exactly.
So you went from 1.3 million searches, hopefully trying to get it down to a little bit further, right? And now you're doing what we call a multivariate search.
And this is the real key, this Boolean multivariate search. So by multivariate, we mean that we're not just searching across multiple engines, we're searching across multiple categories. As anybody who's played with AI for any length of time knows, the individual accuracy on any AI engine is never going to be the same as a human being, or at least not at the moment, maybe in 10 years' time, but right now it's not going to be the same as a human. So the way that you get to accuracy, the way we get to practical results is by cross-referencing, by doing multivariate search across several different categories. And so now we've gone from 1.3 million to 161 results. And we can keep going as we go along. So I could now say, all right, I want to add an OCR, and I want to see, since I know this is Bloomberg, and they tend to put things up on the screen, I want to see where, because I remember that Intel was actually on the screen when the particular search I was looking for, and now we end up with 77 results. And you could go on refining this and refining this. If we go down and we look at, you'll see all of your results down here. If we go down here and we see a particular result, you'll see that it comes up in the player again. If we go here, that was with the transcript shown alongside it. If we go here to the facial recognition, we'll be able to pull up the actual examples of Emily Chang.
And she shows up at 37 seconds into the video, and again at 46 seconds.
And I should mention, it's very important for us, especially for customers who want to use this as a way of showing advertisers that their ad actually played, or that they were actually in a native mention. We give you a fairly large chunk of video, and then we'll give you all the results in the middle of that piece of video. That way you can show it to your advertisers, and they can see that it is actually...
They're not in a unique position to have this kind of trade war going on between the U.S. and China. It kind of hurts them on both sides, right? Both.
This one, yeah.
And the internet might be a little slow.
And Nico Grant for
It's now playing.
Bloomberg.
There we go.
Thanks so much for that update. Be sure to tune in to Bloomberg Friday morning. We've got our interview with Intel interim CEO.
Maybe that's what you're looking for. Maybe it's not. If it is what you're looking
Meantime,
for,
the president has been speaking at the White House. We are waiting for that tape, and we'll play it back for you momentarily. Also, coming up, Facebook is shutting down its private photo sharing app.
By talking about what you could do with your results. So you can add it to a collection. We'll come back to that later on. You can share any mentions or results in here. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we're talking about collections. You can trim which means you can go in there and you can say, right, this is the chunk of video that you've given me back, but actually I only need this little piece, and you can trim it up, and then you can download just the trimmed piece, or you can add just the trimmed piece into a collection. And this is a very common way in combination with collections that people start building a meaningful workflow around that. So say in an advertising case, a broadcast network will say, show me every time that this news anchor appears on screen, mentioning natively this particular native mention advertising that they have been paid to mention. And then you can take all of that, you can take those results and you can give that out to your sales team to say show how effective your campaigns were, or you can give it out to your billing team to make sure that the advertisers know that they're getting their value.
Right. So you make a good point. That is one use case for M&E here that is widely used for discovery, right? Is advertising, product placement tracking, and efficacy, right? So this is one way to quickly find your advertiser or product placement tracking. But there are other applications outside of, because obviously when I say advertising, product placement tracking, people think of TV customers, radio customers, right? But what if you're a movie studio? Like, how can we use this, right? So a use case leveraging discovery would be obviously metadata enrichment of their archived content, right? For search and discovery. So for instance, if you have in cold storage 10 years worth of movies, you can ingest them into CMS, and obviously run all the engines and have your data payload there shown. But then now an executive or someone from the post-production group wants to find Tom Cruise at every movie he was in or every cameo he appeared in. We can find Tom Cruise, which is, if his face is trained, we can then find Tom Cruise with a watch list or ad hoc, and it'll help me find his face wherever he's trained.
Exactly. And you can find him saying that particular line, which is what your editor remembers about the thing that he wants the clip for. So that's where the real power starts
Great.
Together.
And since while we're talking about use cases, I just want to make sure another use case, because I want our audience to know, because they like to always say, what do I sell? What kind of use case? Another use case is obviously for talent development and assessment, right? So you kind of mentioned this earlier. What happens when Emily Chang shows up with her other counterpart? Does she say more often than others? Or does she say a particular word that then brings a greater level of audience to her and so forth? So you can leverage, obviously, and you can find every moment when Emily Chang says a certain word and see and compare that to the analytics and so forth, right? So that is also another use case.
Yeah, absolutely. And people often ask for, for analysis and reports, and also for all the mentions for a particular piece of talent, because they wanted to see how they were doing on Tuesday or whatever it is.
Exactly. Another use case I want to quickly bring up, since we're talking about this, is you showed the engines, and content moderation and compliance is another big use case, whether it be for radio, TV, and the movie studios. Because, for instance, movie studios may be sending their movie film clips overseas, and they may need for certain countries that ban nudity, smoking, or any type of foul language. You can use discovery here through finding foul language through transcription, right? Mm-hmm. And then through a content moderation engine to find nudity as well. And then using object detection to find certain things that you shouldn't be having. So for instance, a gun and so forth. So that'll let you quickly discover and find that and jump straight to that clip, and you know where to edit or where to redact that.
Right, exactly. And I mean, that's an important concept. I mean, especially in the day and age nowadays of these large worldwide releases with all the localization done up front. We're not saying that we can take AI and create a compliance edit right now. But what we can do is we can do what we call work at the top of the funnel, which is sometimes people come to us with hundreds of thousands of hours worth of video.
Right.
They know that there is a certain amount of nudity or something that they don't particularly want to put against certain types of advertisers in there.
Yep.
We can go in there and we can say, right, here's your 100,000 hours. Now here's the 200 hours that you need to get a human to look at.
Yep. Now the Veritone Essentials can kind of work like, it's kind of a dumbed down digital asset manager, if you will. Obviously, a real digital asset manager would be Veritone Core, which we have, and we'll show you guys in a future webinar. But you're going to run into some other folks that say, hey, listen, this is great, guys. I know this is an application that Veritone has. But if I'm a movie studio and I says, hey, I work on Blackbird. My MAM is Blackbird or Evolfin. What do we say to that, right? So, the answer to that is yes. We actually integrate with all these other MAMs and DAMs of the world out there today. So we have formal integrations with Blackbird, with Evolfin, with VizRT, Contemo, CAD TV, just to name a few. So if you guys run into a particular customer who has a MAM or DAM that they're using existing, the beauty of aiWARE is that obviously we have APIs that we can easily integrate into those MAMs or DAMs, but also level up even further with our application. And so we can, again, help them drive, again, AI-driven metadata information there.
Yep, absolutely. And I'd say, certainly on the integration side, but also on the, I've got an on-prem, for security reasons or whatever, I've got an on-prem deployment of my editors, or I've got an on-prem deployment of my broadcast media chain. And we can find hooks back and forth into that, and essentially, low resolution proxies would come up to Veritone, and it would go back down to whatever you needed to do with it on-prem.
Great. Well, now that we talked a little bit about the use case, then why don't we finish off a little bit of discovery and what it can do? Because I wanted to just give our audience a little bit of more perspective with the use cases. Now that we've kind of mentioned all these different use cases, as Robin goes through this, you can see how they'll apply to each of those different use cases we mentioned.
Just before we do that, I'll mention quickly filters. Obviously, we have a standard set of filters. Is another way of winnowing down your content as well. So you can do it by index, which means where your content came from. You can do it by media type. You can do it by date range. You can search for individual programs or stations or markets as well. And that's another way that people use to confine their searches. Once they've done all of that, and you've found a stable search that you think is performing for your business use case, you're going to want to turn this into a watch list. And a watch list is basically a pre-configured search, exactly the same way as the ad hoc search we've shown you here, except we've added the idea of a time content, and particularly for media streams. So we would go in and we would say, run this search against this media stream between 3 and 5 on every Wednesday, because that's when my programs are coming on.
Right. So this is great because now it's kind of, I set it and forget it, right? So I don't have to find, if I wanted to find every time Emily Chang and she says the word Intel, I set that watch list. Don't have to go look it up every day. It'll alert me once it's found through the media stream or what have you.
Exactly. And I mean, all these searches that we're looking through here in Discovery, these were not ad hoc searches. These were all that metadata, all that stuff was created by watch lists against media feeds.
Great. You want to walk us how you create a watch list and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll look at the beginning of a watch list. Again, watch list creation is something that we would expect to take you through, but I'll give you a quick overview of how it would work right now. So you would name your watch list. You'd have a start date and an end date for your watch list, and you can have times in there as well. And that would tell you when to go and find your media or your media stream. If you were looking at files, that would be the period of time during which those files were originally ingested into the system. You can also apply Nielsen data against it. We have it turned on within this account. So if you already have access to Nielsen data, you can put that in. You can have it correlated back against your watch list. Once you've built your watch list, you can then add it to a folder, which would be to tell you where to put the watch list inside your own organization. We'll have a look at a lot of watch lists in a second. And then you create a search by profile, which was exactly the same ad hoc system as we've done before. And then you would select your media, and that would be your various media sources. And then you can decide what you want to do with actions, and that's basically notifications usually email notifications at it. So you can say every time you run this watch list and you get these hits from Emily Chang, send me a weekly summary, a daily summary, or don't send me a summary at all. So that's basically how you turn a watch list into ad hoc search into a watch list, how you build a watch list. You can also, by the way, when you've done an ad hoc search like we just had, you can just do sort of a one button quick click here and just create a watch list directly off this, and this would create a basic watch list against this search here. When we're looking at watch lists here, we'll dive in a little bit more into what watch lists actually look like. So if we create here, this is a pre-built watch list. And you'll see that now you've got this pre-built Amex watch list, and we're pulling back against multiple media sources and files potentially within inside the system. And we're finding all of the mentions against this watch list. And again, you could, of course, share this watch list or add it to a collection or add it to other mentions inside the system. The other thing that you can do with watch lists is run analytics. So we have some pre-built analytics inside Discovery. And I should mention a little bit, because I think Daniel mentioned earlier, the attribute app. The attribute app is a standalone separate app, which we'll show you at another time, which is all of these searches on steroids with a great deal more attention to attribution. But here, what we're showing you is for this particular Amex watch list, we are showing you right now your Nielsen impressions. And you can see we have various different pre-configured bars and graphs and for days of the week, for which programs they were mentioned in, for which media types. As you can see, this is mostly radio, but there is a little bit of television in there. That's what comes pre-configured. And this is the Nielsen impressions. If we go over to the mentions, these are the actual mentions that have been found by the AI. Sorry, that was the mentions. If we go over to the impressions, you'll see the same things against your Nielsen impressions, and so you can start correlating the actual mention of a product on air against what's happening with your Nielsen impressions. When you get to attribute, we've also brought in all sorts of other structured data, but particularly websites. So we can show through attribute, we can show the same correlations. We can show it against website traffic. These are the basic mentions and impression analytics that are built into Discovery. But there are, I should mention up at the top here, you'll see there are some other analytic dashboards. We haven't actually turned them on with inside this account, but we can, and we can build those for people on a basis depending on what they want to use.
So again, this is back to the advertising ad efficacy use case here, where this is great data information for sales and marketing guys who are on the advertising and sales and marketing side of things.
Right, absolutely. And I would say in particular, if you ever run across use cases where people are concerned about native mentions, that's the key ingredient here, is because there really is nothing that compares to this for tracking those native mentions and for showing their efficacy. So I think that's all I've got on Discovery. Daniel, should we quickly show libraries and collections?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you should show what collection means, and this is another application that we have here. So we'd love to have you talk us through this.
Sure. So collections, a very simple concept. Collection is a folder of mentions, essentially, is one way of looking at it. You can add all your mentions to a particular folder, and people tend to do it for particular business use cases.
And this gets pushed from Discovery, right? So if we went back to the Discovery where you showed the clip, after those three dots, once you open it, there was saying push add to collections. This is where it goes to, right?
Exactly. It goes to your collection, right? And you can do that manually. You can do it programmatically too. You can say push everything from this into this collection.
Right. So this is kind of your favorites, if you will, or your highlight reels. So a collection would be a great way. So for instance, in this case here, I was looking to set a collection of all the Dunkin' Donuts and the Girl Scouts flavor campaign. That got pushed into one whole set of collections, and that collections could be maybe consists of 20 videos.
Right.
I can then push the entire collection to Dunkin' Donuts and the Girl Scout advertisers, say, hey, look, we said what we were going to do. Here are all the ads to that, right?
Right, exactly. And people tend to build whole media workflows depending upon what their business use case is around what they do with those collections.
And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be ad brand specific. It could be like, here's a collection of all the times that we talked about earlier when Tom Cruise appeared in the cameo.
Right. Or
Right.
I was doing one the other day where we uploaded a bunch of Lexus commercials, and they all had the legalese with certain different offers. We would run engines against the offers, and then we would create collections of all the ones with 1.9 APR or something like that.
Right.
And we would serve them back, and the particular advertising agency could then use that to verify that the ads went out with the right offers against them. Another similar sort of same use case, but similar sort of thing is you can do it with product shots or actors' faces. So
Right.
you can say, here's my whatever 2017 Lexus whatever,
Right.
and you an engine to recognize that, and then you kick off a collection.
And the collection could be shared not only to, like we talked about, to your customer, but it can also be shared to your peer. So if my boss is looking for all the times, again, Tom Cruise appeared, I'll send him the collection saying, here you go, boss. This is all the times he appeared. Were you looking at anything in particular?
Right.
So we can share that collection as a whole to everything.
Yes, and we have some people who, within some of the major studios, who are using this sort of technology to drive rich metadata against their media, and then serving, I don't know, half a dozen, dozens of downstream departments. So whatever their promo people will call them up and say, show me all the movies from last year that have scary Halloween sequences, but only PG-13. I don't want anything more scarier than that. And then they'll serve it up, and then they'll put together a promo campaign. So there's no end to the sort of business use cases you can fulfill through this.
Nice. So let's go through libraries and tell us.
Just before we do this, I
sure.
wanted to show quickly with Share, because we kind of jumped over that a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
So sharing collections, sharing mentions, sharing media assets. You always have the similar sort of options. So you can create an email directly. You can create a link. Anybody who's familiar with Google, this is an embedded link. This will bring people, depending upon the permissions you set against it, back into the system so that they can view the collection without having to be logged into the system. And you can also share out over social media if you want to.
Right.
Some people are beginning to use that.
And let's talk about the social media side. I know in Discovery you had shown this too, and I failed to kind of tell you this, or at least mention this to our audience, is that sometimes things that come on the linear feed live, and you want to, again, push it down to your digital side, this is a quick way to find that particular clip and then easily share it down your digital media social, I guess, channel, if you will, without having somebody to go and, again, look for it and then clip it and so forth. So we kind of automatically do this so you're that way your content doesn't die on the vine so fast. You can still, again, forward that out and extend it, if you will, to another audience, if you will, or to the same target markets.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I would say there's also some technology within DMH and Core that even amplifies that further within sharing for social media.
Great.
Let's take a quick look at libraries. Really simple concept libraries. So with libraries, we're talking about that subset of AI engines where you can train them, and particularly ones where you can train them using images of some sort. So say, for instance, you want to teach a facial recognition engine to recognize, I don't know, Brazilian athletes or Brazilian newscasters. This is where you would go in and, with a very simple drag and drop interface, be able to train quite sophisticated AI engines. You could also, it's not just faces, pretty much anything, logos, objects. We've had people train things like, whatever, guns and knives and all sorts of different things inside the system. It's really a very straightforward system. You just go in, you create a library. Once you have a library, you have all of your, you start creating the people you want to be with inside the library. And then once you've gone inside the library, once you've created a person, you go and you upload pictures of that person or pictures of that object. And there's some artistry to it, but compared to actually going and training a machine learning engine, it is very minor. There are some tricks. You want to make sure you get a bunch of different angles. You want to make sure you get a bunch of different lighting. But basically, anybody can come in here and very quickly train up very powerful engines. Once you've done that, you publish your library, and it will train any of the applicable engines.
So just to be clear, you can do it. You can go two ways. There is an existing library with a bunch of engines already trained, which I think you've shown back. And if you go to my libraries over here, it looks like here you have a library already, athletes or Brazilian athletes, that's already part of an AI engine that company. So this AI engine has over close to 1,500 trained celebrities.
Right.
That's part of a library, but you can do it yourself, like you said. And that's pretty easy, right? If you can just kind of, you don't have to go through the whole thing, but maybe show us how easy it is by going into one of the maybe Brazilian newscasters and clicking on creating a library, add a person.
Right, exactly. So you just go in and you add a person, and you put in a name, and then you would add faces to upload.
Correct.
It's as simple as that. At that point, they'd be inside the library. They wouldn't be trained. When you wanted to actually train them, you'd go back here again
and hit publish.
Hit publish. And at that point, it would be published out to your engines and trained your libraries. And that'll mean that not only your engine's much more accurate at this point, but they're also much faster, because they'll only be looking for that particular subset of faces.
So in this particular case, there's a couple of things, I guess, applications we should think of. Number one is if you have your own newscast or talent, if you will, and they're not in the library, so they could be a up and coming star, you can train them.
Right.
So that way you can find them in your broadcast media or what have you, right? Or you can, and if there is a celebrity that's in here that's not in the main library, you can train them that way as well. And we recommend, as you train them, you obviously would like to have at least 10 images of different angles that you mentioned, and we can capture them. They're pretty accurate in terms of, even if they're wearing a hat, because again, we're capturing the face. We've seen images when they have facial feature, we can still capture, Ronaldo with a beard or without a beard or whoever, right? So
right, and you can do all sorts of other interesting things too. You can do numbers on football jerseys. You can do logos on football helmets. You can capture, depending on how your broadcaster is presenting their graphics, you may be able to capture a scoreboard and be able to say, recognize this as a scoreboard or whatever.
Right. Great. Well, that's libraries. Do we have anything else you want to show with libraries?
No, I think that's about it.
Well, good. Thank you, Robin, for showing us this. Let's just get back to our presentation over here. So I'll quickly get that slide up for everybody. Here we go. So we'll move over to the next slide. We want to just give you some final thoughts. We know we're running short on time here, but we wanted to kind of review a little bit about last webinar. We talked about, selling the solution and not the product. AI is very new and still digesting a lot in a lot of folks in the M&E world. So what we found as best practice is we actually sell to the solution, sell to the problem, and not sell AI. AI just happens to solve that problem, but at the end of the day, we're really talking about these core, what you see on the screen here, use cases that we're using that happens to be leveraging AI. So as you go into customers, really look at selling aiWARE and the Veritone product in M&E around these use cases, because that's where we find the pain points for these folks, right? Our aiWARE is here to solve problems, and a lot of people make the mistake in going in and saying, hey, I have AI and here's what AI does and so forth. No, we're here to solve the problem, and it just happens to be that AI is part of that solution.
Right. And I mean, I would just say my shorthand for this is anywhere you find someone using an expensive human brain and an expensive pair of human eyeballs to do something that is essentially massive grunt work, that is a fertile ground for AI. But that's why we have people like myself involved in this, is because you don't have to find out, you don't have to qualify those solutions. You just bring them back to us, and we'll be able to tell you whether it's going to work or not.
Great, thanks. I just wanted to also review quickly. Last webinar, we showed you guys a matrix of, again, M&E customers and the use cases, and we wanted to show basically a matrix. And as you can see, we talked a lot of these use cases today on the left-hand side, and they actually apply to a lot of these M&E use cases. Customers. If you look at the top, you can see all the check marks there, and so this is a great reference chart for you guys. We took it one less additional more and kind of showed, okay, in addition to the use cases we talked about, because we're talking about Veritone Essentials today, how all these applications we talked about does apply to these use cases here, right? And then if you go back to the previous slide, these then apply to those target markets we talked about. A couple of things I know wanted to share with you again is the TV case study here that we presented last webinar. And again, I wanted to make it very clear to you guys that, again, this solution leveraged Veritone Essentials, exactly what you saw that Robin showed you today. In this case, again, this financial TV broadcaster leveraged Veritone Essentials to help find all its advertisers and campaigns, and it actually took them. Their problem was that they had 2 full-time production assistants manually logging this, so there was a lot of humans in the loop in this particular situation. And so when we leveraged aiWARE Essentials and Veritone Essentials, we basically helped augment that. We didn't, we helped them improve their workflow efficiencies, helped them automate that and get things now in real time. And what happened was we actually, they didn't lose their jobs. They just were able to now go do other things. But, imagine if they wanted to hire an additional human capital just to do this. We saved over $100,000. We improved their workflow by a factor of 2 or more. We had production assistants now doing more important stuff than just trying to find manual log and find all these reports and so forth. So again, wanted to just share with you this use case leveraging Veritone Essentials in that side. Here's another use case that we did around a sports league production company. Again, very similar to kind of film, where again, they were looking to transcribe and tag 4 years worth of archived content. And they were actually using humans again to do this. And where aiWARE Essentials came in, or Veritone Essentials came in, is they leveraged AI engines around transcription. And at the end of the day, once they transcribed all that, they were now able to find all the keywords they needed to. So we helped them basically find strategic content in near real time. And as a result of that, obviously, we've seen an over $200,000 worth of human capital savings. Again, improved their workflow efficiencies now that, we have AI engines basically tagging all the unstructured data versus a human doing it. And even if a human were to do all this stuff, they won't be able to capture everything on screen. A human will miss out on everything, right? Whereas the AI engines will be able to capture all the different things. Finally, before we go, just a couple more things. I just want to remind everybody about our channel partner portal. Again, this is where you go and get all your sales enablement materials, marketing materials. This is where you also do deal registration. That's very important as we want to, again, have you guys register the deals. And this is where you qualify for any spiffs going on and so forth. And speaking of spiffs, I just wanted to again give a final reminder that the Q1 channel partner sales incentive does end in a couple of days at the end of this month. So we got some opportunities here for you to make some additional money. So again, here's some information on that. We've sent some emails to you. If you have any questions, you can email us. And so before we go, we want to just go over any question and answers that you may have. And we'll take a look at the chat box here to see if there's anything we have here. So we got one question, Robin. So this is kind of easy, I guess. I guess in the under the attribution and discovery side of things, obviously we show analytics to that. And so someone was wondering, in terms of attribution, do we have another application that does show better advocacy or attribution than what discovery has?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the application we mentioned. Attribute would be the one for that. So at the moment, that is primarily looking at transcription against website traffic and Google Analytics. But I know that the product team is in very active development on that, and they have an idea for a bunch of other structured data sources as well.
Another question is, once you ingest the data into CMS, how long does it take before you can start processing the engine and start looking things in discovery?
That used to be a difficult question to answer. Now, happily, it's a very nice question to answer. So it is near real time now. We've spent a lot of time over the last previous calendar year, re-architecting the entire system on the background. As you can imagine, there's a lot of stuff that happens between that data going up there and the results coming back. There are engines being spun up and propagated across multiple servers and all sorts of things happening on the back end. And we've spent a lot of time with our queuing algorithms and with our indexing algorithms to make that near real time.
Great. So just before we leave, I guess we just want to remind people. So if any of you guys have any questions about Veritone, and before you guys go into customer, please feel free to reach out to your salesperson or Robin, who can actually give you guys some idea on how to prep for your customer.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, again, just before we leave, I want to share with you guys our contact information on screen. You have Robin Melhuish's contact, myself, and if you have any other general questions, you can always reach out to channel@veritone.com. Thank you very much on behalf of Robin Melhuish and I. We want to thank you guys for joining us today, and we'll catch you at our next channel webinar. Thank you very much now. Bye-bye.